My wife, Hasty, and I left Tehran to escape the chaos and went north. Hasty was ill. The doctor said rural air would be good for her. I bought a large garden in a small village in Mazandaran with an old villa in the middle. It was abandoned, but it was beautiful. I thought we could build a new life there. But in just the first week, I saw things that were hard for anyone to believe. There were sounds coming from the walls, shadows that shifted with our movements, and very, very frightening whispers at night. At first, we thought it was just our imagination, until one of the workers was found unconscious in the garden, his back covered in wounds and bruises. That day, I realized I had made a mistake. A terrifying secret. Something that wouldn't let anyone live there. That house held a secret, a terrifying one, something that wouldn't let anyone live there. Hi, I'm Mortesa. Welcome to Azari Aksha. Before we start, please like the video so we can dive in with energy. Let's go. Hi, I'm Kave, 33, married 5 years. My wife Hasty and I had a good life. A house in West Tehran, freelance job, hobbies, occasional trips. And thank God we were doing well financially. Everything was going smoothly until that cursed night arrived. The night when Hasty woke up with a terrible coughing fit. At first, I really thought, but her coughing wouldn't stop. After weeks of visiting doctors, tests, and examinations, we finally found out that Hasty had developed severe asthma. Her doctor said that Tehran's polluted air was like poison for her. He told us that before things got any worse, we should move to a city with clean air and relocate. That doctor's words changed our lives. That night, until we stayed up talking about this decision until morning. Hasty said, Kave, I've always wanted a house in the countryside. We stayed up talking about this decision until morning. Hasty said, Kave, I've always wanted a house in the countryside, with a big yard full of fruit trees, lots of chickens and roosters and a few dogs and cats, clean air and pure peace. I'm tired of all this smoke and traffic. I told her, do you want us to rent out the house and move to one of the quiet small villages up north, get a house with a yard, get a big one and experience what real life tastes like? My work is online anyway, so I don't necessarily have to be in Tehran. To be honest, I work in website design and optimization. Location doesn't really affect my job much, and I can make a living from anywhere. Hasty laughed at me because she knew I was attached to Tehran. She thought I was just going along with her music, but a few days later she realized I was completely serious. We started looking for the house we wanted, a big garden along with a traditional rural house. We used everything from apps like Divar and Shapur to Instagram pages that dealt with real estate in the north of the country. We picked a few villages and small towns, and a week later, we set off for Mazandrán. Finding a suitable place to live that matched what we wanted was not easy at all. Our trip to the north wasn't just an ordinary trip. It was almost like a relentless search. Each time, a new city, finding a suitable place to live that matched what we wanted was not easy at all. Our trip to the north wasn't just an ordinary trip. It was almost like a relentless search. Each time, a new city, a new village, from Noor to Neka, from Bekhshar to Shirga, we would go, look around, and then return to Tehran to get our affairs in order. This cycle kept going on and on. It was a kind of... We didn't just want to simply buy a house or just any ordinary villa or property. We were looking for a place to live out our dream life. One day while we were searching for a village and villa that matched what we wanted, near Amirdé, we had a special feeling about it. We didn't just want to buy a house or a villa. We were looking for a place to live our dream life. One day, while we were searching for a village and villa that matched what we wanted near Amirdé, we found a very, very small and beautiful village. That place caught our attention. I told Hasty, I think this is our lost paradise. The road was narrow. It was full of twists and turns with forests. The air was cool and mist settled. A peaceful village with old houses and a stream running through. Hasty got out of the car and took deep breaths. It was just like that, full of twists and turns, with forests. The air was cool and mist settled. A peaceful village with old houses and a stream running through. Hasty got out of the car, took deep breaths and said, "This is exactly the place. The kind of place where you could live for years without a single worry." She was right. There was a special feeling about that place. It was as if time was moving more slowly there. We headed toward the village council office. I asked the village head if there was any property for sale. He said, actually, since the kids had grown up and needed to go to the city for school and work, the families went with them too. What's the feeling about the place? Was when we mostly head to the village council office. Asked the village head was any property for sale. He said, actually, since kids had grown up and did school and work, families let them shoot. That's why there are a few houses that were for sale. He went with us. He showed us a few houses, but none of them felt right to us. We wanted a quiet place. He took us and showed us a few houses, but none of them felt right to us. We wanted a quiet place, exactly right next to the forest itself. In the end, he said, "There is a house a bit lower than the village, about 1 kilometer away. It's right next to the first plot of the forest. The land is big, but it's been uninhabited for years. You see, some bad things happened in that house before, and no one..." The gentle, melodic strains of music begin to fill the air, slowly expanding to encompass the entire space with its harmonious presence. A rich tapestry of sound unfolds, creating an immersive auditory experience that captivates the senses and sets a distinct mood. The music plays on, a continuous flow of intricate notes and rhythms, weaving itself into the very fabric of the environment, providing a vibrant and engaging backdrop to the unfolding scene. Almost 2,000 square meters, full of tangerine and orange trees. Some of them even had fruit. But it's better if I don't even talk about the house and the yard. Because of the lack of maintenance, it looked more like the natural jungles of the Amazon. The house was abandoned and ruined. The walls were black. The windows were broken and the roof was badly warped. All 2,000 square meters full of tangerine orange trees. Some of them fruit. It's better if I don't talk about the house and the yard. Because of the maintenance, looked more natural jungles of the Amazon. The house was abandoned and ruined. The walls were black. The windows broken. The roof was badly warped. Honestly, it took a while to take low. But the poor guy seemed to have developed some psychological problems. There were always sounds of arguments coming from his house. One night, a fight with his family escalated, and he, meaning all the family members. Music plays here. The poor guy's son never came back here after that incident. He put the land, the property, and everything he had up for sale. I also went to Tehran to see him and got his permission for... The poor guy's son never came back here after that incident. He put the land, the property, and everything he had up for sale. I also went to Tehran to see him and got his power of attorney to sell. Hasti and I fell silent and looked at each other. Hasti said to me hesitantly, "Kaveh, I'm a little scared. Are you sure this is a good place to buy? There's a heavy feeling here, and with the story they told, I'm really doubtful." I told her, "Look, maybe its past was bad, but now it will be ours. We have to fix up the house ourselves. It's just a house. It's the owner who brings a property to life with their energy." That evening, we went to sign the contract. At a really, really good price. I told her, "Look, maybe its past was bad, but now it will be ours. We've fixed the house ourselves. It's just a house. It's the owner who brings a property to life with their energy." That evening, we went to sign the contract at a really, really good price. We agreed to buy that property. The owner said to us over the phone, "If you've made up your minds, then go ahead and finalize it." He said, "Even if you ask to cancel tomorrow, I won't cancel the contract anymore." He said, "Even if you ask to cancel tomorrow, I won't cancel the contract anymore." We stamped the checks and handed them over. The deed was written, and that property was now mine and Hasty's. We had to go back to Tehran to rent out the house and get ready to emigrate. I remember the village head, before signing the deed, told me, "I've explained the whole story of this property to you. The decision is yours." We had already engaged in extensive discussions with a few highly experienced and reputable real estate agents. There was a considerable amount of essential work that needed to be meticulously completed before we could proceed. We diligently took care of all those necessary preparations and critical tasks, ensuring everything was in perfect order, and finally, we got ourselves thoroughly ready for the momentous move. We became completely prepared and fully equipped for the significant journey ahead. With great effort and careful planning, we systematically emptied the entire house, packing away every single item. We donated all the extra and cumbersome items that were more suitable for city life to a young couple. It was decided that after the renovation, we would buy new things according to our needs. That day, we packed the car to the brim and loaded the rest of our necessities onto a Nissan truck. Music. A soft, persistent drizzle of light rain was gently falling. The rich, earthy aroma of wet earth deeply filled the air. The road stretched out like a smooth, endless ribbon in a dream. Hasty peacefully rested her head against the cool window pane and gazed out at the verdant, towering trees of the dense forests. A soul, an emptiness. If empty, what blocks? Even I. Rain fell lightly, wet earth scent filled air. Road a dream. Hasty rested head against window, gazing at dense forests. Since north, she felt much better. I was happy we escaped noisy city to start rural life with incredible nature. Since House a Ruin, we couldn't stay before renovations. That's why we decided to experience a rural life. Since that house was a ruin, we couldn't stay there until renovated. So we decided to rent one of the rooms in Grandma Sakine's house for a month or two until our restoration was finished. Grandma Sakine's house was the closest one to our garden. She was an elderly woman, 60 years old and She lived alone and was actually very welcoming to have us stay with her. Our villa was located right at the end of the road, a narrow path that wound through the forest until you reached the house. From a distance, only its yellow sloped roof was visible. Honestly, the yard was more than 2,000 square meters. It was filled with trees everywhere, but since no one had lived in that house for a long time, many of the trees had become dry. On the other side of the wall, there was also a narrow stream running by, and the sound of its trickling water created a really interesting atmosphere. An old stone wall encircled the yard, half collapsed. Beyond the wall, a narrow stream flowed. Its trickling sound gave the place a unique feel. The house itself was abandoned. Anything touched fell apart. It needed much work to become what we wanted. After consulting the village head, we hired workers from Nadaram. Early in the morning, the workers we had already arranged with showed up at the site. There were 5 hard-working young men from the same village. One of them was named Behzad, a friendly guy who was also the foreman. After about an hour of work, while he was moving dirt with his shovel, he turned to me and said, "Are you sure you want to stay here and rebuild this house?" I laughed and said, "Of course. What, did you think I was crazy to leave Tehran for this? Come here to buy property? No, God forbid, engineer. It's just that people say the owner of this house was crazy once upon a time. He used to shout in the middle of the night and bother everyone. I was a kid back then, and I remember it clearly. Strange noises used to come from this house. Some of the locals say this house has several spirits, and they're living here. Some people hear unsettling and peculiar noises coming from inside the old house late at night. Music within music, a symphony of sounds. When he came into this building, that's when this happened to him. That's why I asked you, engineer." Hasty came over to me at that moment, and so that she wouldn't get scared, I didn't continue the conversation with Behzad. But my mind became very preoccupied. He was healthy until he entered this building. That's why I asked you, engineer. Hasty came, so I stopped talking to Behzad to avoid scaring her. My mind was preoccupied. Work ended. I went home, had dinner. As I was about to sleep, the village dogs barked, but there was another sound. It was as if it was the distinct sound of many people shouting and talking together, creating a vibrant and lively atmosphere. At first, I thought it was because of the wind shaking the branches. The sound was coming from our own house, as if it was people shouting and talking together. At first, I thought it was just the wind shaking the branches, but after a few minutes I was sure something was wrong here. I was so tired that night. I don't even know how I fell asleep. The next morning I woke up to the sound of the rooster crowing. It wasn't even 8 o'clock yet when I set out toward the villa. Nane Sakane gave me a thermos of tea and some. The weather was gloomy as always. It wasn't even 8 o'clock yet when I set out toward the villa. Nane Sakane gave me a thermos of tea and some fresh bread and cheese so we wouldn't go hungry there. When I arrived at the villa, Behzad and the other workers had gotten there before us and were already busy working. The yard was full of dry branches and leaves. Behzad said today they're supposed to fix the porch and dig the sewage channel again. I went inside the house to see how much work needed to be done there. The ceiling was all rotten and full of holes. The rain was gently dripping onto the floor. The walls were all cracked and crumbling too. Inside the house, it looked unequivocally as if someone with wet, grimy black hands had deliberately touched the walls over and over again, leaving behind disturbing dark smudges. A profoundly strange and deeply unsettling feeling came over me, enveloping my senses completely, and an overwhelming, urgent desire to loudly call out to Hesad welled up within me. It looked as if someone with wet black hands had touched the walls over and over again. A strange feeling came over me. I wanted to call out to Hesad and ask him what all this was. Suddenly, Hasty screamed. I rushed outside in a panic. I saw her with Sade on the porch, both of them pale. She told me that something was moving over there by the orange tree. I looked carefully, but I couldn't see anything. Hasty said, but for a moment, her hand got caught in branches. I told her, don't be afraid. Nothing strange or scary is here, despite what you've heard. Hasty insisted. For a moment, someone stood by the tree, a shadow with horns. Behzad, wanting to calm her, said, ma'am, it was probably a dog or cat. You must have seen it wrong. Don't be afraid. Hasty remained unconvinced, frozen and motionless, staring at. Hasty said, I swear I saw its shadow. I'm not hallucinating. That day the rain didn't stop until evening. When the workers finished their job and left, Hasty also left early. Hasty said, I saw its shadow. I'm not hallucinating. That day, the rain continued till evening. When the workers finished and left, Hasty left early to prepare dinner. I stayed behind to tidy up. It was getting dark. The sound of water rushing through the ditch was audible. As I closed the door to leave, a strange noise came from a room. I stopped. This time, footsteps came from inside the house. Terror consumed me. I don't know how I made it home in that darkness. That night, Hasty was quiet. After dinner, she told me, something's wrong with that house, not because of what people say. I feel it. I tried to make everything seem logical, but my anxiety... Deep down, I had started to believe it myself. There was something wrong here, but I had no choice. I had bought this place and I had to finish the job. I spent the whole night thinking and struggling with myself. I didn't even realize when I fell asleep. The next morning, one of the workers named Reza was supposed to go early to start building the wall. Thick fog had covered everything. An hour later, the other workers and Reza, when they eventually entered the imposing building, they were confronted with a truly horrifying scene. Reza was lying motionless on his stomach next to the wall. At first, everyone thought he had fallen from the wall while working, but when they got closer and looked carefully, they saw that his entire back was covered in bruises and scratch marks from fingernails. His hands and feet were trembling, and his breathing was fast and shallow. First, there was the sound of whispering and terrifying laughter. Then it was as if someone attacked me from behind. It scratched me and threw me to the ground. When I hit the ground, I didn't understand anything after that. We were all frozen with fear. We sent Reza home to rest. It was uncomfortable. First, that whispering everything. Then it was someone behind. It scratched me and threw me to the ground. When he hit the ground, I didn't understand anything after that. We were all frozen with fear. Stay home, rest. Reza said, I'm never back here again. I'm about to hopeless regret. I want to do. One of the workers, Sajjad, came up to me and said, Engineer, I want to tell you something, but it has to stay between us. I think Reza fell off the wall by himself. Lately he's been smoking and getting high more often. I asked Sajjad, then what about those bruises and scars? Sajjad said he probably got high and started hallucinating, then hurt himself. I was really unsettled by this whole story, and I knew that Reza hadn't just fallen by himself. There was a problem. I have a brother. He's good at his job. If you allow, I can ask him to do the wall construction instead of Reza. Unsettled by this whole story, I knew Reza hadn't fallen. There was a problem. So I told Sajjad, all right, no problem. Tell your brother to come. That day, I thought maybe engineer Afshar had also encountered this entity and lost his mind until he caused that disaster. That day ended and the work moved forward. At night, I went back to Hasti. I told her that Reza had fallen from the wall. Hasty said, Kaveh, believe me, there's something wrong with this building. Let's go back to Tehran. He caused the disaster. That day ended, work progressed. At night, I told Hasti Reza fell from the wall. She said, Kaveh, this building is wrong. Let's return to Tehran. Forget my illness. I replied, we'll stay a few more days. If confirmed, we'll go back. But the real story happened 2 days later. Sajjad was working in the yard when he saw a shadow through the villa's window, smiling at him. That menacing shadow violently attacked Sajjad, and the poor young kid, utterly terrified, desperately tried to run away, but it was too late. At that moment, his foot caught on a brick and he fell right into that well. The same well that had been dug just a few days earlier. Poor Sajjad broke his arm, and finally he too believed that there was something wrong with this building. Everyone gave up working on the building. I myself was seeing things that made staying there anything but easy. A few times, I saw shadows inside the building, or even heard strange voices calling me from behind. They were telling me to leave this garden. We talked with Hasty. They were terrifyingly threatening me. They were telling me to leave this garden. We talked with Hasty about going back to Tehran. We've also had this property up for sale for years, but it seems like it just can't let go of us and is clinging to me. If you're interested in buying it, be my guest. So, friends, what do you think? Do you believe this story was real, or was it just a scary story someone wrote? It's the writer. Please write your thoughts for me in the comments, and if possible, I kindly ask that your comments be respectful. Well, friends, we've reached the end of the story. Thank you for staying with me until this point in the video. If you still haven't subscribed to this channel, I'd be happy if you did so. Please write your thoughts for me in the comments, and if possible, I kindly ask that comments be respectful. Well, friends, we've reached the end of the story. Thank you for staying with me until this point in the video. If you still haven't subscribed to 1001 channel, I'd be happy if you did so. Doing this gives me a lot of energy and motivation to continue the story. If you have any criticisms or suggestions, let me know. Until the next video and story, goodbye.